Coming into the season, the matchup between the Rams and the Buccaneers looked like it was going to be a pretty good one. And it did turn out to be pretty good, but more so for the Rams who won this game 34 to 24.
Yeah, so if those of you who remember from last week, I picked the Bucs to win this one. Uh, if you didn't remember, now you know. If I would have known that this would have been the Bucs team that was going to show up against the Rams, I don't think I would have picked them. Not that they were bad, but this just wasn't the team that we've seen for the other parts of the season. And this Rams team is hungry. Matthew Stafford comes out and gets 343 yards with 4 touchdowns and no interception. Uh, Deshaun Jackson gets 120 yards and a TD on just 3 receptions, but the real star for the Rams here was probably Cooper Kupp, who gets 96 yards and 2 touchdowns, and his chemistry with Matthew Stafford is already through the roof. Tyler Higbee gets 40 yards and a touchdown as well, but he does fumble. That fumble is recovered by Andrew Whitworth. For the Buccaneers, if you were to look at Tom's stats, at least the yardage, you'd think they did way better than they did. He had 432 yards. He had a passing touchdown. He did have a fumble, and he led the Buccaneers in rushing yards and also got himself a rushing touchdown. But he led with rushing yards with only 14. So the Buccaneers rushing game just not present. Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones Jr. are just not getting any action. It's not on them really. They're just refusing to run the ball, and it's not working out very well. Chris Godwin gets 74 receiving yards. He does have a 2-yard touchdown rush. Mike Evans leads all the Tampa Bay receivers with 106 yards. Giovanni Bernard, who actually is a running back, gets the only receiving touchdown and brings in 51 yards. And he was targeted 10 times, which is tied for Mike Evans. He brought in 9 of those targets. Tyler Johnson and Gronk both bring in 63 and 55 yards, respectively. And Tom Brady, as I mentioned earlier, he did fumble. Giovanni Bernard is the one to recover that fumble. So Bernard really doing everything he could this week. And Ryan Suckup misses a field goal, but with the score being 34-24, that field goal really doesn't mean much in the end. I don't even think that would have given them any momentum. So this was just kind of a Rams dominating game. Matthew Stafford to Cooper Kupp popped off and did what they had to do to get the job done. And it really looked like it was Bernard and Brady against the Rams. So I don't know what happened to the Buccaneers defense or why that they just refused to run the ball, but I think both of those things definitely hurt them.
Yeah, so for the Bucs defense, obviously they have guys that are missing at the cornerback spot, so that's probably a big reason. Regardless of the fact that the Rams have an amazing receiving core, Tyler Higbee, Robert Woods, Deshaun Jackson, of course, going deep, Cooper Kupp as well to top it off with Matthew Stafford, who's definitely glad to be out of Detroit at this point. So we see the Buccaneers, they bring in Richard Sherman, and we just got that news today. So we'll see how that turns out. But on Sunday, they definitely were just not looking good. That play to Deshaun Jackson, I mean, that looked like Deshaun Jackson 10 years ago. I mean, he's doing this pretty much every year. He'll just come in one game and get a 90-yard touchdown or some crap like that. And like he's 21 years old still. Cooper Kupp, like you said, he was great. His chemistry with Matthew Stafford is off the top charts already. Uh, the rushing for both teams was not very good. Sonny Michel, he was all right. Just 3.4 yards a carry on 20 carries for a little under 70 yards. Otherwise, they didn't really have much rushing. But the complete lack of rushing for the Bucs is kind of what surprised me. And I see a lot of teams do this nowadays. And I know we're getting definitely a passing league now, but just seeing a team not even really try to run the ball at all. I know the Rams defense is good, but they didn't really try. You had Ronald Jones with just 5 carries, Leonard Fournette with just 4. Um, Tom Brady, like you said, was the leading rusher. When would that ever happen in any other scenario? The fact that he was the leading rusher and he only led with 14 yards is kind of crazy to think about. And then Giovanni Bernard, like you said, he was one of their best receivers out of the backfield, and he's a running back. So I don't know why they just refused to run the ball. Obviously, once they got later into the game and they were down by so many points, you're down 2 scores. Obviously, you're not going to really run the ball much, and you can't really fool them with play action because, I mean, you're obviously you got to pass at this point. Uh, Tom Brady, he was working with what he had. I mean, we know AB was out. Rob Gronkowski, he got injured during the game, but he should be back this week against New England, so that'll be a return for him as well. But he still had Mike Evans, who went off 8 catches, 100 yards. Chris Godwin's still there, and you still have other weapons. So for me, mainly it was on the defense for me for the Buccaneers. The fact that you couldn't stop the Rams, it was a 0-0 game in the first quarter. And then, you get score here, score here, score here at the end of the half. The Rams were able to stop the Buccaneers, and then they come out third quarter, 17 points. And they really didn't even have to do much in that fourth quarter because it was just pretty much too much for the Bucks at the end, even though they got that late score. Didn't really matter, and they almost sacrificed Giovanni Bernard just to get garbage time points there. So do I expect the Bucks to get dominated like this very often? No, but it does show that they can be beat. They're not an invincible team. If you attack their secondary, which is hurt, and the secondary is probably the weakest part of their defense in general anyway. But when their secondary is hurt and you've got receivers like Deshaun Jackson, Cooper Cup, and Robert Woods, you've got a great quarterback that is, really coming into his own on this new team. And that's your way to beat the Buccaneers. Tom Brady can throw for 500 yards. We've seen him throw for astronomical numbers and still lose in the Super Bowl against the Eagles because his defense just wasn't up to par against Nick Foles and the Eagles. So I think that just kind of shows like, hey, there is a blueprint for beating the Buccaneers. Obviously, like I said earlier, bringing in Richard Sherman might help. We know Richard Sherman isn't the same guy that he was, back with the Legion of Boom, but he should still be able to provide something for that defense. So we'll just have to see how they do next week. I'm pretty sure they'll beat the mess out of the Patriots, but we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Patriots are in for a bad time, and I definitely agree that the defense for the Buccaneers is the bigger thing to put the blame on for this game. I do want to point out though, as I kind of relook at some of the things that happened with this game, the Buccaneers ran their offense very oddly. For one, Tom Brady leads in rushing yards. I mean, that wasn't really, I guess, by design. It just kind of happened. But the other things are Giovanni Bernard, the running back, as we mentioned, gets 9 receptions, 10 targets, and Chris Godwin, the the receiver, gets 1 carry for a rushing touchdown. And Bernard actually didn't get any touchdowns or any touches to rush any carries at all. So I don't think that's really big to blame for their loss. I just think that they have an interesting plan. Like I don't really understand. I know he only rushed once, Godwin that is, but I don't really understand the receiver getting a carry and Bernard not getting any. And I get that Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette exist. So like of those 3 running backs, I'm gonna run more through Fournette and then probably Jones and then Bernard. But I'm a little perplexed by the way they kind of ran things that day. Um, or yeah, that game. So, but like you said, this is a team that can fall, and this is the kind of team they'll fall to. This team with an extremely good receiving core and a quarterback who is hungry enough to put pressure on that Tampa Bay defense. We saw Dak almost do it in Week 1. Tampa Bay could have easily lost that game if things would have just went slightly different. So I mean, we know that they're not an invincible team. It is definitely hard to beat them, but you get these kind of teams that have a high-powered offense who can really kind of beat down that Buccaneers defense, and you might be able to come out with a win like this.
Yeah, I mean, going back to last year, actually, I mean, there were games where earlier in the season, before the Bucks went on that run to end the season, leading to the Super Bowl, where they did get beat by the Rams. They got beat by Chicago. Now that was just due more to them overall not playing well, because that was a much lower scoring game. But the Chiefs game is the one I would think about, where Tyreek Hill pretty much just abused that defense, that secondary specifically. And obviously they came back to beat him in the Super Bowl, but that just goes to the point that no team is unbeatable. The Rams, they have weaknesses as well. We know now for sure what the Bucks' weaknesses are, and it's just a matter of whether teams will be able to contain them when they're back at full strength. Obviously, AB is going to be coming back. Gronk will be back, as I said, and they're bringing in Richard Sherman, and hopefully their corners will be able to stay healthy for them, and maybe they'll be able to just have shootouts. Their front seven is not really going to be a problem. Jason Pierre-Paul as well, he was out, so if he's back at some point, then they should be able to mesh back together and play well this season. But again, this game just showed anyone can be beat in the NFL on any given Sunday for sure.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that this is like game over for the Buccaneers. They've got almost nowhere to go but up from here. But yeah, this shows that there's no team here that's going to be perfect. We haven't had a team go 16-0 or anything like that in a very, very long time, and it's probably not going to happen with how competitive that the league is. Like, I don't think any of the teams that are currently 3-0 will survive to make it 16-0. So, and we saw the Steelers last year start 11-0 and then collapse. So it is hard to. This is a tough league, and it's very hard to be undefeated. And I mean, just even getting something like 11-0 is extremely impressive. I mean, we know what happened to those Steelers, so they might not have been so impressive, but just being able to do things like that in this league, that is extremely good. And to put up a fight the way the Buccaneers did, at least try to fight against the Rams, that is something. Although, yeah, the ending for the game was some garbage time action where they almost threw Giovanni Bernard away. But yeah, teams are not impenetrable in this league, and this is a very tough league no matter what team you are.
Just one last thing. You mentioned going 16-0. I mean, now that we have the schedule being 17-0, 17 games, you have to go 17-0 to be undefeated. I mean, that's going to be
Yeah.
even harder. We know Tom Brady went 16-0 back in 2007, and they ended up losing the Super Bowl. So it's been a very long time since we've had a team go completely all the way through. And under no circumstances do I think it'll happen this year at all.
Yeah, definitely not with that extra game. That's just not going to happen.